Welcome back to another edition of the Here We Go podcast. I'm your host, Trent Ging, and today I'm a little exhausted. Are we really going to talk about Brandon Aiyuk again? Guys, I'm going to break this down one last time. I'm going to talk about, from San Francisco's standpoint, why this doesn't make sense. I'm going to talk about, from the Steelers' standpoint, why this doesn't make sense. And this is the last time I'm going to talk about Brandon Aiyuk until something happens. So let's dive right into this thing. I'm going to start with San Francisco. Because if you listen to this side of the argument, logic's going to tell you to quit getting so excited. From San Francisco's standpoint, they are in a win now scenario. The window is right now. Brock Purdy is still on his rookie deal. You have playmakers all over the field. Brandon Aiyuk, in my opinion, is the second best player on the team full of playmakers. Why in the world, if you are a Super Bowl caliber team, would you get rid of your second best weapon over a contract dispute? Because he requested a trade? Who cares? I mean, who cares, honestly? I could care less if players request a trade. The team has total control in the situation. They have 100% of the leverage. Unfortunately for Brandon Aiyuk, who is a player that I agree he deserves to get paid. He's a good player. But guess what? If San Francisco says they're not paying him, he's not getting paid. What's he going to do? Hold out? Okay, you're under contract, dude. They're going to fine you. And for a guy on his rookie deal, those fines are going to hit a little harder than some of the guys who are seasoned veterans. I just don't see San Francisco having any motivation to trade him, regardless of the contract situation. Let's look at the second piece of this puzzle. If he walks next year, they don't do absolutely anything. They have him play out this year under the current deal. They don't do anything in the offseason, and he walks. They get a third-round compensatory pick. That's not bad. For doing absolutely nothing to keep a guy, I'd take a third-rounder, right? I mean, why not? It's a free pick. That's if they do absolutely nothing. Now, I was talking last night, and Flip Fisher had a point that I totally agree with. They could have him play out this season, tag him, and trade him next year. So they could potentially still get at least as much value out of him next year as they could this year. They could do a sign and trade with him. Have another team come in, agree to a contract, tag, trade him, they sign him. They've got their player. San Francisco gets much more than a third-round compensatory pick. The bidding is going to be higher in the offseason than it is at this time, because you're going to have players that's when the contracts come into play. Right now, a team can make it work just to bring him in to make a championship run. They may not even look at him as a long-term answer. Say a team like the Jets. I don't know if the Jets would even be in the market, but I'm just throwing them out there because Aaron Rodgers is an older quarterback. They're going all in right now. Who cares if they keep him beyond this year? They're trying to win a Super Bowl right now for a franchise that's struggling. You know, Washington would be a team that I would totally think would be in on a sign and trade. Bring Aiyuk in for a young quarterback who's a rookie this year. He'd be in his second season next year. Put some weapons around him. Now, here's another piece of the puzzle. Allegedly, San Francisco is asking for not only compensation through the draft, they want a player swap. Who in the hell on the Steelers roster does San Francisco want? Do they want Calvin Austin? I mean, we're not trading Roman Wilson. We just drafted the guy. I mean, are we trading Van Jefferson? Would they want Van Jefferson? Then we also have to give up a first. Right? Their asking price is really high. Mark Caboli threw out a hypothetical. They'd want something like maybe an Alex Highsmith and a first-round pick. Of course, San Francisco's asking price is going to be high. They hold all the cards. They have all the leverage. Guys, this is a pipe dream. San Francisco should have absolutely no motivation to trade Brandon Aiyuk whatsoever. They are trying to win a Super Bowl. They were extremely close to getting to the Super Bowl. Then Brock Purdy hurts his shoulder. They go to the Super Bowl last year. They're in that game. Can't pull it out. Their window's right now. They have the defense. They have the pieces on offense. If you take Aiyuk out of the picture, it is going to dramatically change that offense. He is their pure route runner, the guy who gets open when Purdy needs a guy to get open. He's good with the ball in his hands after the catch. He's a physical receiver who can block. He fits their system perfectly. Why in the world would they get rid of him? As a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say, if I were in their shoes, I would want to do a deal with Aiyuk and get rid of Debo. You've got your all-purpose guy in Christian McCaffrey. Why do you need Debo? He isn't durable. Now, he hasn't missed a ton of time. But Aiyuk's not missing any time. He's the better receiver. He's the better all-around player, in my opinion. I'd rather keep him. The only conceivable reason I can see letting Aiyuk walk and keeping Debo is because Debo is just simply a lot cheaper. You've got Purdy's contract coming up on the horizon. Can you fit Aiyuk into the salary cap? I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to dive that far into San Francisco's numbers because I really don't care about San Francisco. But I'll tell you this, I guarantee you there's a way they can make it work if they want to make it work, because GMs do it all the time. If I were in their shoes, I would keep Aiyuk at all costs, and I would get Debo out the door. That's just my opinion. So let's look at this thing from the Steelers' standpoint. You're a team, whether you want to admit it or not, you are a team in rebuilding mode. This guy is not going to turn you into a Super Bowl contender. You don't have a sure thing at quarterback. Hell, we don't even know who the quarterback's going to be this year. If you ask 100 people who starts more games this season, Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, I bet that poll is split damn near right down the middle. That's the situation we're in Pittsburgh. And if you don't take that seriously, you just aren't really taking anything into consideration. You just want to get the best player available. And I understand that. Like, I totally understand it. If they've found a way to get Brandon Aiyuk and it made it work to where we weren't going to cripple our franchise going after this guy, I'm all for it. He's a phenomenal player. He's not a top 5 wide receiver. I don't want to pay him like a top 5 wide receiver, and I damn sure don't want to give enough capital up to make him like a top 5 wide receiver. I would put him closer into that 8 to 10 range than I would the top 5. There's a lot of things he does really well, but there's a lot of guys you can name that are clearly better receivers. So I'm not bringing in Brandon Aiyuk for top 5 money and giving up top 5 kind of compensation for a guy who's not a top 5 receiver. It doesn't make sense, especially for a team in the rebuild. The Steelers have done this thing completely backwards. We are trying to rebuild and win now at the same time, and that typically doesn't work. Now the roster continues to improve, and you do have to, in my opinion, and me and Colin talked about this, you really do need to have the pieces together before you go get your quarterback. And they're working on that. But why bring the final piece to the puzzle into the equation if there's no plans to go get the quarterback? We don't even know where they have no plan. I'm telling you right now, they have no plan. This is a wait and see type of season right now for them as far as that quarterback position is concerned. They don't know if they're going to re-sign Russ. They don't know if they're going to re-sign Justin. They don't know if they're going to look to the draft. And there's nobody in free agency next year unless Dak squirts out into the market because Jerry Jones just gets sick of it and says, well, you ain't winning playoffs, and I'm getting rid of you. It's another thing Colin and I talked about in the last podcast. There's no clear definitive answer at quarterback, and there's nothing on the horizon that suggests there's a clear plan in place. So why go pay big money and give up big compensation for a guy that's not going to help win a Super Bowl right now? I think there's too many receivers coming out of each draft that are quality players that you can get on a rookie deal for an offense, which this might be the most important piece of this whole thing. This is an offense that's a run-first offense, ladies and gentlemen. You do not need 2 guys who demand the ball like George Pickens is going to demand the ball and like Brandon Aiyuk wants the ball. I mean, he talked about how he wanted the ball more than he got it in San Francisco. Well, they're going to pass a hell of a lot more than we are in Pittsburgh. So you want 2 of those guys in the same room when we're expecting whoever the quarterback is to throw roughly 25 to 30 times a game. And if Tomlin had anything to say about it, they would never throw. He'd run the ball 100% of the time and just control the clock and try to win a 3-0 game. He don't care. He does not care about the modern NFL. He's all about winning, however that needs to be accomplished. This offense is built to run the football. We brought in Russell Wilson, who is maybe the game's best game manager in the history of the NFL, who has a great deep ball, but he's not a great in rhythm passer, and I'm a little worried about this part of him. If we're going to run a lot of play action, timing is going to be a big piece of that. I'm not sure if he's going to keep timing with that. Justin Fields has accuracy issues at times. Doesn't see the field and read the field well. You don't need two top-tier wide receivers, I'm sorry, with the two quarterbacks we have in this room. And that's assuming George Pickens takes the leap that everyone thinks he's going to take. So, again, if the asking price, let's say what Capoli's, and I don't think he was suggesting this is the thing, but he was trying to throw out what San Francisco would want, a package that they would want. Are we really willing to give up Alex Highsmith, a first-round pick, and pay $30 million a year to Brandon Aiyuk? I am never in my life considering that trade if I'm Pittsburgh. There's nothing about that makes sense to me. Because if you draft a quarterback next year, you need that first-round pick. If you're not drafting a quarterback next year, you need to draft a defensive lineman. So assuming wide receiver is not a need next year, you still need a very high-end pick, defensive lineman. Because Larry Ogunjobi is going to be gone. And if Cam does not get in the contract extension, you need two of them. So your first-round pick better be defensive line. You can't trade that pick. I'm sorry, you cannot trade that pick under any circumstances and fill the roster next year. You're going to lose a lot if you do make this deal. So let's say that's not the compensation we offer. And they want a player swap for the wide receiver position. They already have two guys in that room that's better than anybody we can give up. I mean, they have Jawan Jennings there. They just drafted Ricky Pearsall. Those guys are going to be better than the Calvin Austins, Van Jeffersons, Quez Watkins of the world, Scotty Millers of the world. Who would they want back? If you trade one of those guys, you're going to have to give up more than just a first. You'd have to give up a first, the player swap, and you'd have to give up future compensation, probably like a 2026 third. Or hell, for the player that we'd be giving them, maybe they'd be asking for a second. I don't know. I would, listen, guys, pump the brakes. This trade does not make sense in any way you look at it, other than the fact we'd improve at wide receiver. But I would say at what cost? And the cost is too high. I'm not making the deal. If by some miracle San Francisco was dumb enough to give him up for a second-round pick, I would do that deal. But again, I don't like how much you're going to pay this guy. I do not want to pay him $30 million. He is not Tyreek Hill. He's definitely not Tyreek Hill. But Justin Jefferson's contract sets a new market. So you're going to be paying this guy like a top 5 wide receiver, even though he's not. Because that's just where the wide receiver market's going. And I think at some point, this wide receiver market's going to end up correcting itself. I don't want to be the team that gives out the last deal before it corrects itself. There's too many good young players coming into the league at that position who are pro-ready right now. This is going to self-correct. At some point, teams are going to start looking at it in the light, not same like side-by-side comparison, in the same light they do running backs. I'll just go get another guy. So again, I do not think this thing makes sense from San Francisco's standpoint, because they're a Super Bowl team ready to win right now with a rookie quarterback. Go get it right now if you're them. From Pittsburgh's standpoint, This does not make sense because the compensation is too much for a rebuilding team that does not have all the pieces in place. I think Brandon Aiyuk is a very good wide receiver. I'd love to see him in black and gold. It's just not going to happen. In my opinion, I'm not saying it's impossible. Omar Khan's a different dude. He's done things totally different than what we've seen in the past. So if a trade happens, don't come back firing at me that, oh, you said this wouldn't happen. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm saying it shouldn't happen. But again, stop with all of the speculation. Let it play out. Like, let's just let this thing play out and see where we go. I think with the tools they have on the offense right now, that's the only tools they intend to use anyway, because they're not going to be a passing offense. You're going to be in 12 personnel quite a lot this year. So you're going to see a lot of Darnell Washington, not 3 receivers on the field. It's just a reality. So we'll see how this thing plays out. But I think Pittsburgh's staying put at this point, unless somebody is a cap casualty somewhere they can sign for cheap. There's a quality player that's a clear upgrade in this room. That's the only additions I see happening at this point, in my own opinion. But again, let's see what happens, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope you like this episode. Hope you like the content. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Give me your feedback, because I know there's a lot of people that are diving into this every time I say they shouldn't do it. Hope y'all have a fantastic day.